بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله اللهم افتح لنا على الحمد لله. We're starting again. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All of these technical difficulties just make one appreciate one's blessings more. Okay, so I think I'm going to go back one slide because I might have lost connection. So Imam Muhammad Maulud says that for most of the Maliki scholars, one waits till Imam is in is stationary in the new position, and that's the it's not required, but there's actually a lot of detail to this rule, and so I just wanted to just be as brief as possible. Um, you definitely don't want to get ahead. You don't want to get ahead of him. You definitely don't want to get ahead of him. So, and there are a lot of details. So if somebody's having some issues, I can actually go over the details. I actually made a slide of, if you, what happens if you follow him, like all, the different steps related to it. But ideally, what you want to do is, as opposed to some of the other madhahib in the Maliki, you want to wait till he's in the position and then you want to follow him. So an imam who knows his fiqh, he actually won't say Allahu Akbar of that action until he is actually in that action. So he'll go into sajda, then he'll say Allahu Akbar, so that people can actually follow him and not get ahead of him. The issue in terms of invalidating the prayer, takbir and salam are getting ahead of him, or doing it with him will invalidate the prayer. So be careful about that. Some of the other actions, they'll either be makruh if you get ahead of him, or they'll be haram depending on if it's a recitation or if it's a movement. All right, so, but with the takbirat al-ihram, so the takbir of entering the prayer and the salam, you want to make sure you don't start it until he's completed it. So he says, Allahu Akbar, and then you say Allahu Akbar. And he says, Assalamu alaikum, and then you start your Assalamu alaikum. So don't start it unless he's finished it. And that's the second bullet point. While in the prayer, you can't change your intention from a follower to a solitary worshiper. So somebody comes, your husband comes home and he's praying, and you say, okay, I'm just going to follow him, and but you're praying as a solitary worshiper. You can't change your intention. You have to complete your prayer as is. Or if you're a follower, you can't. You're all of a sudden say, I'm not going to follow the imam, and change your intention. Now, a latecomer, maintaining the prayer lines is given priority to catching one rak'ah. So, for example, if you're worried about, if you don't think you'll catch the imam before he raises his head from ruku', right, from bowing, then you just walk to the prayer line, and then you say Allahu Akbar, and you join the prayer, right? If you think you'll be able to catch him in the bowing, but you haven't walked up to the prayer line yet, but you're in that area, you just say Allahu Akbar and you go into ruku, and then you shuffle from that position, from the ruku position, you shuffle to join the prayer lines. And you can walk a couple of 2-3 rows in this situation to join the prayer line, and that's fine. So that's the difference, is in this situation, you're already in the prayer. Make sure you say 2 Allahu Akbars. One, the Allahu Akbar of entering the prayer, and one Allahu Akbar of going to ruku'. For example, if he's in ruku'. You wouldn't, if he's in sajda, obviously you wouldn't go into sajda and then, crawl from there. But say if he's in ruku' or if he's standing, right, you could shuffle from there. Okay. It is permissible to follow the imam if you can at least hear or see someone who is following the imam, even if you're following him from your home. And certainly if you can see the imam himself, or if you can see the imam or follow or hear the imam. So you don't actually have to see and hear him. And if you can only see or hear somebody behind the imam, you're not intending to follow the follower, but he's just a guide for you. So make sure you don't make that intention that you're following a follower, right? You're still following the imam, but you're using anyone following the imam as a guide. And it's permissible to bring a child, so that's the next bullet point, to a masjid if he's at the age of discernment, which means that he understands right from wrong. And either he does not play around in the masjid, which happens a lot, or if he plays, when you tell him, okay, stop that, he's not going to just ignore it, or she. But if they're not going to stop playing around, you have to leave them home and just pray at home. Because it ruins everybody's prayer. The mom can't concentrate, and it ruins it for everybody else. So, okay, it is permissible to walk a couple of rows, and this is what we mentioned, or 3 rows to join the rows, such that you pray. Either you're a latecomer, so you're joining the row, or such that you pray in front of a barrier. Right, because if you know people are going to pass by, then you need to be praying in front of a barrier. Right, it's recommended, or sunnah, depending on there's difference of opinions. So if you know people are gonna walk in front of you, then it's recommended, or it's sunnah, difference of opinion on that, to have a barrier. So if you just you're already in the prayer, you can walk a little bit, a couple of rows to get to the barrier. Okay, righteousness of the imam. I'm not sure how clear this slide is. I'll try to make it a little bit bigger. So this is really important. And the imams are they're your intercessors, as mentioned in the hadith. And so it's really important whom you pick to pray behind you. So you want to pick someone, again, I've mentioned this before, someone who knows their fiqh. Just going to try to bold it so maybe it's easily visible. So there's difference of opinion. The issue is, does the imam, if he's a disobedient person, like if he's disobedient in his actions, like he smokes, or he hangs out with women, or he's not particular about, maintaining the barrier between men and women, or he backbites, or, he's shaved his beard, things like that, then he's considered but he, for example, he knows tahara, and he knows how to do a proper prayer with its, with all its actions. It's complete with, the fard, the sunnahs. He knows, he does it completely. So that's the first. So this imam falls into this first category, that he's disobedient in his actions that are not related to the prayer. So if that's the case, there's difference of opinion about the follower's prayer being valid. Sidi Khalil, and the fatwa book is is Sidi Khalil, and Ibn Asha, they say the follower's prayer is invalid, and that's a sound opinion. Right, even if he smokes, he knows how to pray. He knows how to do tahara. He knows his tahara. He knows. So his disobedience is not related. It says it's in his actions, even if actions are not related to the prayer. Right. So Ibn Ashar and Mukhtasar Khalil said his prayer, the follower's prayer, is invalid. The commentators of Mukhtasar Khalil. So the other opinion is it's makruh to pray behind an imam like this, assuming again that the followers are upright. So the followers are upright, and the imam's not upright. He's disobedient in actions not related to the prayer. In this case, the prayer is either invalid or it's makruh. Now, what if the gray one is when the disobedience is specifically related to the prayer? Like he doesn't know the rules of purification. He doesn't know what's going to break the prayer. He doesn't know, right? So in that case, the prayer would be invalid, because his disobedience is related to, like he doesn't know ghusl properly. I mean, for example, if he does know tahara properly, and he knows, and he also knows what makes a prayer invalid, what makes a prayer valid. But he doesn't know all the details of the sunnahs, but he does a complete prayer with all the actions, the sunnahs. But he doesn't specifically know, well, okay, these are all the fara'id verses, these are all sunnah in every single detail. His prayer is still valid, and then and the follows prayer is valid. But if he doesn't know the proper rules of purification, then praying behind him would invalidate your prayer. So you have to be careful about that. And this is why I mentioned the hadith. Your imams are your intercessors. And one thing that one of my teachers mentioned, he said that, and the disobedient imam is not going to be, if he's disobeying Allah, he can't put in a good word for you. Like intercede is to, you have to have some, we have to be people of standing with Allah, so that if we're going to be intercessors. So he's not going to be an intercessor for you. Okay, and then an imam with faulty beliefs. So these next few slides, the last one and this one, they have to do with the conditions of the imam. So if you prayed behind someone who has faulty aqidah, below is the ruling of your prayer, right? So what is the ruling? Is it if you prayed behind somebody, so it depends on if it's faulty aqidah, if there's difference opinion about whether that leads to kufr, like the Khawarij, there's difference opinion about whether their prayer, whether their belief is kufr or not. Some of the ulama, the scholars said that they're disbelievers, and some of them said they're not. So if you pray behind somebody whom there's a difference of opinion about amongst the Sunni scholars regarding whether these beliefs are considered apostasy, then it is recommended to repeat the prayer if the time of prayer has not elapsed. So you shouldn't be praying behind somebody who has faulty beliefs. But the issue is whether their prayer is valid or not. I mean, you shouldn't be starting the prayer behind him. But if you start the prayer, it's valid, right? Because they're sinful in their aqidah, so you're not supposed to pray behind them. But the prayer is valid as long as there's some valid difference opinion about whether their belief takes them out of Islam or not. If there's no difference of opinion amongst the scholars regarding these beliefs leading to apostasy, then your prayer is invalid, because it's like praying behind somebody who's a non-Muslim. Right? And in general, an invalid prayer must be repeated irrespective of when it was initially prayed. So even if the prayer time has gone out, but you haven't, you have to pray it, because it's like you didn't pray it, unfortunately. So it's just, a lot of things, it's just really important to choose whom you pray behind. And this is, I'm mentioning this from a hadith it's from Imam Nawawi's collection. The first step to attaining the love of Allah is with the obligatory actions. So if our obligatory actions are nullified, then that's problematic, because we can't, a slave, there's nothing more beloved that or a slave draws close to Allah with what Allah Ta'ala has made fard for that servant, slave of Allah, male or female, and then he continues to draw close to Allah with the nawafil until Allah loves him. And this is, I'm just explaining hadith and meaning. And so a lot of times we'll do a lot of nafil, but we don't, it's just, some of it's just, it takes a lot of time to learn some of this fiqh. So, and the nafs doesn't want to, it wants to take the shortcut. So it's just, I need to do a lot of dua. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'alta sahla. Oh Allah, there's nothing easy except what you make easy, and do a lot of salawat, and Allah give me tawfiq. And it takes a lot of dua. And that's why traditionally, they would have those halaqas where it was just to open your heart, and then they would have the halaqas like these fiqh halaqas. So now a lot of times people are doing attending gatherings where their heart is open, but but then they don't take the second step to actually attend the fiqh gatherings. Even some of the greatest ulama, their gatherings didn't have a lot of students in them. Okay, physical limitation of the imam. So So the imam who prays in a chair or on the floor with only head movement, so they can't do a proper sajda, they may not leave others praying with head movements. So, and remember, this is the third step. So somebody has to pray. This is the dominant opinion, right? But if the imam sits on the ground and is able to perform sajda, such that they put their forehead on the ground, then they may lead others like him who are unable to stand and pray. But he can't lead other people who are actually able to, who are unable to stand and pray. He can lead them, but he can't lead people who can, who are able to stand and do the full prayer. So he's still doing the sajda with the forehead on the placing the forehead on the ground. So he can lead people like him, right, or lesser than him. But one can't pray behind an imam because the follower's prayer can't be stronger than the imam's prayer, because the follower's prayer is built upon the imam's prayer. It's connected to it. One may not pray with head movements, and the prayer is invalid unless one is not able to pray sitting on the ground with an actual sajda. Right? You can't go to head movements. One can't say, okay, well, I'm going to sit in the chair because I can't pray standing. You have to pray. You can't leave the sajda unless you are unable to put your forehead on the ground. So, okay, third point. Okay, tajweed mistakes of the imam while reciting the Quran. Again, there's a lot of detail to this, but I actually didn't go over all the detail, and I'm just going over some main points from Mukhtasar Khalil. So if an imam makes there's different opinions. If he makes an intentional mistake, right, it invalidates. It would invalidate the prayer. And then there's another opinion that only if he makes a mistake in the Fatiha, in tajweed. So the bottom line is you want to pray behind somebody who studied his tajweed. Khalil mentions a third opinion that that if the imam can't distinguish between lad and law, that's the third opinion, that would invalidate the prayer. But Jal Sadiq was saying the difference between lad, like waladhalin, and zalimin, the oppressors. He said those two actually are close in their makharij. The letters are not very different, so that's actually not a major mistake. But Khalil still lists it as one of the types of mistakes that would invalidate the prayer. So that's the third one he lists. So basically any intentional mistake, this is from Khalil, or mistake in the Fatiha, right? If somebody has a speech impediment, like they were born that way, and they're actually physically unable to, they were born that way, that's a birth defect, then that's a different situation. This is talking about lahan. This is called lahan, right? Or somebody's in their 80s and they learned it very late, and and it's difficult to change that. I mean, there's more leeway for that, inshallah. But bottom line is learn your tajweed and pray behind somebody who knows their tajweed. Okay, then some disliked actions in the congregation prayer: to pray between the pillars because it disrupts the rows. But the main thing is you need to know whom you're praying behind. I mean, to pray in front of the imam without need, right? Without need. For the followers to follow an imam on the deck below in a ship, and they are on the deck above. This is talking about right? You're on a ship. This is because it is difficult to follow his movements. It's makruh, so it will remove some of the reward, but the prayer is valid. Likewise, for somebody, he talks about, Abu Qubais, they say the Prophet ﷺ would go and do, would do worship there before prophecy. So they were able to see the Kaaba from there. I don't, obviously now, I'm not sure what's going on with all those large buildings. But likewise, for someone to pray on top of the mountain, to follow and the imam is praying in the haram, in the masjid, it's all makruh, but the prayer is valid. For the imam in the masjid to pray without a rida placed on the shoulders, and it's the way Sheikh Sadiq showed it to me is you put it on your head and then it goes over the shoulders, right? It's khilaf al-awla for an imam not praying in a masjid to pray without a rida, a shawl, or likewise for a solitary worshiper, a male, because we asked, like, what about a woman? And Sheikh Sadiq thought because she's already covered that it's not, this generally only applies to men. So that they should have a rida, a shawl, as they're assuming their shoulders are covered, because it's makruh to pray without with their shoulders uncovered. So, but assuming a man's shoulders are covered, it would not. They should try to pray with the shawl that goes over the head and drapes over the shoulders. And I actually do that. Subhanallah, I do it anyway. I have a Mubarak shawl that somebody gave me from a very righteous person, so I use that. Alhamdulillah, it doesn't distract me, and it doesn't I don't fidget generally in the prayer because of it. So. Okay, last point. Disliked actions in the congregational prayer: to pray in a row by oneself if there's a gap in one of the other rows. So remember we said you can walk 2 or 3 rows to fill in a gap. But you shouldn't pull a person to your row. I know in some of the other madhahib they allow that, but we shouldn't be doing that once they've started the prayer. For the imam to lengthen the ruku for a late comer so he catches that rak'ah. Right? Generally speaking, unless one of the exceptions he gives is that somebody, like, they're fearful for, like, a sultan's going to come and pray with them, and if they don't lengthen the rak'ah, I mean, subhanallah, it's a sign that even the leaders in those days, that was important to them, to catch a rak'ah in the prayer, that the imam, if he fears that he'll be harmed, if he doesn't lengthen the rak'ah for the leader, I mean, it's a sign that he's has some level of righteousness, because if one's persistent with the prayer, it makes eventually, even if one's doing all kinds of haram, it will eventually, the person will come around. So, and that's mentioned in the Quran, that it prevents foul things, the prayer. So if somebody's still, that's why one needs to encourage people to pray irrespective of what they're doing. Rushing to the congregation should be such that one's breathing does not become fast. And I just wanted to mention, last point, so the definition of makruh is there is a reward for leaving it, but there is no punishment associated with doing it. There's a reward for leaving a makruh act, and there's no punishment associated with doing it. But it's definitely going to reduce the reward of whatever that action is. May Allah accept our actions. But alhamdulillah, there's no punishment. So it's the light makruh, as they would say in the other madhahib, the tanzihan. And so alhamdulillah, we've reached the end of I believe it's lesson 15. And inshallah, we'll do one more session next week on the congregational prayer. And then inshallah, we'll go to, we're either going to go to Umrah or Zakah. Probably do zakah or umrah or zakah next, inshallah. I'm just going to see, there's some other sections in the prayer in terms of, nafil prayers and things like that I might add, and we might do that. And then inshallah, the next session after that, next chapter will probably zakah, and then umrah, or umrah and then zakah. Jazakallah khairan. Jazallahu anna sayyidina sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ma hu ahlu wa jazallahu anna sayyidina sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ma hu ahlu wa jazallahu anna sayyidina sallallahu ما هو أهله جزا الله عنا سيدنا صلى الله عليه وسلم ما هو أهله سبحان ربك رب